Hey guys, Gabe here. Quick little disclaimer. When we recorded this episode, it was within a few days of the 4th of July, so unfortunately some people were firing off fireworks while we were recording. I didn't think it would be too noticeable on the actual episode, and for the most part it isn't, and a lot of the times I was able to cut it out. However, there are a few times where I wasn't able to cut it out, and it is pretty noticeable, so I just want to apologize in advance. Hopefully it doesn't negatively impact your listening experience, but just wanted to get that out there. So if you hear noises in the background, that's all it is. So anyway, thanks, and hope you enjoyed the episode. Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name's Gabe.
Hey, my name's Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today. But first, Jeff.
Yeah?
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I forgot to mention last week that last week's podcast was the point where we had been recording for 6 months.
Really?
Yes. So this episode is episode 26, which is half a year. Last episode was 25, but we did have that bonus episode. So that was the 26th week of recording.
Oh, wow.
So half a year.
Yay.
It's crazy. Did you think we would be recording for 6 months?
I don't know. I wasn't sure of anything, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. I hoped we would, but you know, to be honest, there's a lot of things that I start and then I don't finish. So
right, yeah. No, I'm really good at not finishing things. I'm really good at not even really starting things.
Same here.
That's my favorite thing to do, actually.
So I think it's been a fun 6 months.
Yeah,
here's to another 6 months, and so on.
I've been having a good time coming here and talking with you, and then Gabe goes and does all the work.
It is a lot of work, but hey, I love doing it. Yeah. One of my favorite parts of the week, to be perfectly honest, is after we've done recording, when I sit down with a tall glass of RC Cola, I strap on my headset and I start editing an episode. And then about an hour and a half later, when Audacity crashes and I lose all my editing, that's probably the worst part of the week. But the best part of the week is right before that.
Yeah, it's like the possibility of greatness is and then the realization that I have so much work to do.
I know. Yeah, it is a lot of work, but hey, I love doing it.
Yeah.
And I could always just do less work. I put more work into it than I have to.
But that's where you get your fun, and and then you do have you have this you want to make sure it's a good experience.
Exactly. I don't ever want to create a product that I wouldn't want myself. Right. So that's what I always think about with this podcast. I've had people tell me that this format of the podcast probably isn't good for this type of the content, the subject matter. That's up for debate. But regardless of whether it is the best fit for this type of material, this is the podcast I would love to listen to.
Sure.
So I like it. I really like it, and that's why we made this.
Yeah.
All right. So Jeff, for this episode, I'm not going to do anything crazy. You're at the Dragon's Hoard. There's a magic item.
What?
The Dragon's Hoard.
The Dragon's Hoard.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry.
Sometimes you just stumble into the Dragon's Hoard.
Yeah. There you go.
You weren't expecting it. You were just doing a raking motion next to a hill, and then there you have it. You haven't read Ready Player One, have you? No.
I know Dave had, but not. I don't think you had.
I think I started to listen to the audiobook.
God, it's so good.
But I don't know if I can listen to Will Wheaton.
Yeah.
I love Will Wheaton.
Shut up, Wesley.
But exactly. Like I can hear him smirking in his voice. And true. I hate it.
It's totally true.
I hate it. I don't hate Will Wheaton. I love Will Wheaton. But I just but it's just the way he speaks, you're just he's got that I'm talking voice. I don't know.
I know what you mean.
So I'll probably go back and try it again because I like the idea of this book, and I'm pretty sure I'd be able to get into it. I think about that crap all the time anyway. So
yeah. Well, because you made the raking motion reference, which is a reference to the Tomb of Horrors, and the Tomb of Horrors plays into the book Ready Player One. It's really cool. So this item has nothing to do with the Tomb of Horrors or with Ready Player One. I apologize, everybody. But this item was submitted by Justin from Crit Academy. This is a magic item called the Mirror Force Pendant. This intricate silver pendant has a purple crystal as its centerpiece. When you cast the spell Shield and successfully defend against an attack, as part of your reaction, you can deflect some of the attack's energy back at the attacker.
Neat.
The purple crystal absorbs the force of the attack and converts it into a spell attack with a range of up to 30 feet for 1d10 force damage. Spell save DC is 13 dex save. A target within 5 feet has disadvantage on the save.
Okay.
So it's a pretty simple item, but I think it's really cool.
And I think it's neat that like it converts it back in. It converts it into magic. So I mean, like there could, if somebody has some sort of like magical resistance or anything like that. They can deal with it that way. So yeah, that's neat. I like it.
It's pretty cool. Like, so the way the shield spell works, one thing that I think is interesting about this item is that the item doesn't cast the shield spell. It has an effect that happens when you cast the shield spell, which maybe there's a way you could make this item so that it does use the shield spell itself, or at least lets you do it once per day or something. But I think that's probably limiting a bit more than Justin intended it to. But so with this item, the shield spell normally is a reaction, so you cast it in response to someone else's attack. So when someone else casts a spell at you, or they make an attack at you or something that attacks your AC, you cast the shield spell, it gives you a bonus to your AC, and then with this item, if it misses, you then convert it into an attack back. So if they're attacking you with a sword, there's a big blast of magic energy that hits them, and because they're so close in melee range, they have disadvantage. If they shoot an arrow at you, it turns the arrow into magic and then deflects it back. Or something like that. Or, maybe it makes a little bit more sense or is easier to imagine if it was a spell that they were casting at you that attacked your AC, then, it just converts that spell into another spell and shoots it right back. I really like effects that knock attacks back at the attacker. I love the deflect arrows ability, and I love when you're able to throw the thing back. Like in 5th edition, if you deflect an attack and you reduce the damage to 0, you catch it, and then I think you can just immediately throw it back or something. I could be wrong. In 3rd edition, I think you had to have like a special feat that lets you do that.
Yeah, I think so. I think there are feats.
Yeah, and then there was an epic level feat that let you use deflect arrows on spells.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you could, if there was a ray being shot at you, you could just knock the ray back at them.
That's pretty cool.
I think is just so cool. That's such a cool idea.
That's very Dragon Ball Z.
Yes. Yeah, so I think that, like I said, it's a pretty simple item. I think it's really cool. And the fact that it is dependent on using a spell yourself, I think is kind of interesting as well, because you're only going to be using this item if you are a spellcaster. So I think that'll do it for the Dragon's Hoard today. It's been a bit of a quicker one. But if anybody wants to submit magic items for the Dragon's Hoard, or if they would like to submit questions for us, how would they do so?
They can do that by sending us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com.
There you go.
We also have interpartyconflict.com.
We do. Well. It directs to our blog, of course.
Yeah, so if you want to leave a comment on there somewhere, and you can post questions there if you want to.
Sure. And we also have a subreddit at reddit.com/r/interpartyconflict. And I like to post discussion questions for you guys there. Not many, it's not a super bustling subreddit, but occasionally people will respond to them, and it's cool to see other people's, get other people's responses to questions that I post on there.
Skylar recently told me that, I forget how many she said, but we have a decent amount of subscribers on the subreddit now, I think.
Oh, do we? I actually haven't checked. I suppose I could check right now, but maybe that would break the illusion. I won't. I'll leave it.
But last time she mentioned, it's like, oh, you guys have such and such. I'm like, really? That's more listeners that's more than the listeners we have, I feel like.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll have to check.
All right. So yeah, I think you want to get into some questions?
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool.
Okay. Our first question comes from Essential NPCs Podcast. They posted this one on Reddit. What is the best way to go about finding or starting a game?
Yes. So Essential NPCs Podcast is another podcast. I've only listened to a couple episodes of theirs. They are an actual play podcast, but from what I understand, each season, so like every few episodes, they do a different game system.
Okay.
So they started out doing a 5th edition game, and then they'll move on to other stuff after that story arc finishes. Cool. So so they asked this question on Reddit, and there's a lot of ways to find a game. First thing, probably the easiest, simplest solution is to talk to people you know.
Mm-hmm.
See if there's anybody you know that plays D&D or wants to play D&D. I guarantee you there's probably somebody that you're friends with on Facebook that either has played D&D, wants to play D&D, or is currently playing D&D.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really kind of surprising. There's the reputation that D&D has of being like really nerdy, you know, and only nerds play that, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, no, I am constantly meeting people that's like, I never would have thought this guy plays D&D.
Sure.
Not to give too many physical details, but like Chris, that I've mentioned many times on the podcast, the absolute last person I would picture when I imagine the average D&D player.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah. Did Moochie play more than that one time?
I don't think so.
Like, because like Moochie's a guy I wouldn't have picked for, you know, for a D&D player, and like he played with us and we had a good time.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, his personality, like, I feel like he was more playing it just because he wanted to hang out with us as friends.
Exactly.
And that's cool. A lot of the time when you play D&D, it's just because you're hanging out with friends and hey, let's play a game while we do it.
So in that way, like if you're looking for players, like it could just be somebody that just wants to hang out and like is up for doing whatever, and
absolutely
maybe they'll end up really liking it,
maybe
know? Or maybe they won't, but they'll still put up, they'll still do it because they want to hang out with you or something.
Yeah. Another one of our friends from high school, whose name's also Jeff, not you, of course, but what if I was talking about you and you didn't know it? Anyway, I feel like he started playing D&D with us just a little bit because he wanted to hang out with us, and then in recent years, I've noticed he's looking for a D&D game.
Huh.
And, I think that's really cool. Yeah. So I guarantee you.
And if it's the Jeff I'm thinking of, he's really into like the.
Oh, absolutely. Totally is in keeping with.
He's a huge nerd in a lot in a lot of But he's into like swords and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like I'm not at all surprised that he would be playing D&D. In fact, I'm surprised that he wasn't already playing D&D, to be honest.
Yeah. So what we're saying is like, just ask people they might be really into it, or at the very least just willing to give it a shot. Yeah.
And there are probably going to be people that that if you were to post on Facebook, hey, who wants to play D&D? There'd probably be people who are like, well, I've heard of it. I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. And then they might want to learn how to play, and then they might really like it.
Or heck, there might even be a game, somebody might already be running a game and they just didn't know that you played.
Exactly.
So
now it's a bit trickier if you don't know how to play the game, which is definitely that's where a lot of people I'm sure will be coming from.
Sure.
So, in that case, you might want to narrow the search a bit and be like, hey, who can teach me how to play D&D? Again, I guarantee you someone will be like, oh, raise my hand. So talking to your friends is probably the most straightforward way.
Yeah.
After that, try and see if there are any gaming stores in your area.
Mm-hmm.
There may not be, but there probably are.
Yeah, they're not going to be really easy to find. They might not even be on something like Google Maps or something like that. They might be tougher to find.
So they could be gaming stores. They're also, if there are comic book stores, any store you've looked at and you're like, nerds shop there.
Right.
I guarantee you they've got some sort of like a bulletin board or something that people can come and post. I'm looking for a D&D game.
Yeah, maybe even as far as stretches like a movie rental place.
Maybe.
I mean, there's not many of those around either.
Well,
those gonna be hard to find now.
When did we record this episode?
Is it 1981? Anyway, like places you assume nerds would gather.
Yes,
and they're okay with you like putting up a message or something.
Library.
Yeah.
I guess. Sorry, we keep talking about locations that may not exist in a few years. I do apologize.
Libraries will be around.
They will in some form. Yes. Yeah. I say with the greatest intentions, as my wife is librarian.
Yes.
but there are fewer libraries than there were, 20 years ago, I'm sure, or maybe not. But so yeah, if there's a local library, go there. If there isn't already a group that meets there, I'm sure there's a place that you can put up, with their permission, of course, put up a bulletin saying like, hey, I want to start a D&D game. I don't know how to play. Someone will probably, look at it and send you an email or give you a phone call and say, hey, I've played a couple times. Let's figure this game out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to meet someone in person like that, that's a great way. There's also a lot of websites that you can use to find a physical game. One that off the top of my head is penandpapergames.com. I'll put it in the show notes. I believe it is penandpapergames.com. InterPartyConflict.com. It's a website. I think it's like a message board, but it's mainly there to find players. So you go there, you make an account, you can like put in your where you're located, I think you can even put in like what preferred days you would like to play, versions of the game you've played, if any. And then it even gives you like a notification if someone in your area is near you that plays the same game as you, I think. I know because I signed up for this back when I lived in Tennessee, and I don't think I've ever unsubscribed from it, so I still get notifications when like someone in Smyrna, Tennessee has a move that plays D&D. So that's one website. There's lots of other websites too. In fact, the game that I played that introduced me to Chris, Melissa, and John, those three players. Chris I've mentioned many times. I started playing with them because I signed up on a website that I think was dndadventure.com. I don't even know if that website is still around, and I don't feel like checking. But I think that was the website that I signed up. I signed up on some website. I put my information there, and then this guy John, he sent me an email saying, "Hey, I'm looking to start a game. In this area. I'm going to be running this edition." And he asked me some details about myself. We started talking back and forth. Eventually, I started playing with him, and I met the other people he played with, and the rest is history. Yeah. So lots and lots of ways to play a game face to face.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if there wasn't like an app or something for like smart devices.
I'm sure there is. I don't. I know. I sound like I'm from like the 80s or something. I do not own a smartphone.
Right.
And I have no intention of owning a smartphone anytime soon.
Which is I think is probably a good idea.
Probably.
Like, I'm already sucked in to that part of the world, but yeah. Even though I don't use it as much as a lot of people.
Sure. But so I'm sure there are apps that let you find other role-playing game.
Yeah, people. I think recently I downloaded it's in beta, but it's not for tabletop games, it's for like online computer games and stuff like that, but it's like it has a list of like a bunch of different games, mostly like things like Team Fortress, Blizzard games, Counter-Strike and stuff like that. Okay. So but it's a pretty good system for like finding people to play online games with.
And sorry, what's it called?
GamerLink.
GamerLink.
I think it's called. I'm pretty sure. I'll check it.
If you listen to this and instead of saying GamerLink, Jeff says like I don't know, Gamer Blink, then you'll know that I went back and edited it.
Yeah, he's just put a little blurb over it.
Yes.
But I'm pretty sure it's called GamerLink.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm sure there's something like that for tabletop games, and like you can, it's like I want to play D&D this edition at this in this schedule or whatever. There's got to be something like that out there. It might not be well known, it might not be well made, but somebody's probably made something similar.
Right. And this is all if you want to play in person. Mm-hmm. If you don't need to play in person, if you want to just play a game, like there are lots of ways you can play the game on the internet.
Yeah.
One of the more common ones is probably playing through a program like Roll20.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people use. I've personally never used it. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah.
But you can download that and you can play. I'm sure that you can look on message boards and find people that play Roll20. I'm sure you could go on. I'm sure there's subreddits for stuff like that. If you want to play a play-by-post game, which is probably a bit of an older method to play, but people still do it.
Yeah.
It's a different type of game.
Yeah.
It's a lot slower paced.
But it's such a simple thing that they're everywhere. Yeah. Like people play all sorts of games. I mean, like there's plenty of just role-playing forums where people just role-play, characters and stuff like that.
Exactly. So if you go to like paizo.com, their message boards, I'm sure have several play-by-post forums. There are probably play-by-post Reddit subreddits.
Sure.
So just go there and just type in play-by-post or something and then, see what you can come up with.
Yeah.
If you're willing to play online, you're living in the best possible time to do that.
Yeah. I'd have to go back. I haven't really toyed around with Roll D20. Or Roll20. What is it called?
I think it's just Roll20.
It's Roll20. It's Roll20.net, I think.
Maybe. I could look it up, but I'm not going to.
But I haven't really looked at it too much. Mm-hmm. But I do I remember back in the day there was a couple programs. I forget what one of them was called, but the other one was OpenRPG.
Yeah. I want to say we tried getting something like that running back, like when all of us out of high school, we all started moving in separate directions.
Right. Yeah. It's trickier. But yeah, I remember playing a bunch of different games on Open RPG because like somebody had made like a Dragon Ball Z game or something like that. I remember playing that a lot, and that was kind of fun. But like you said, we tried using something like that, and it doesn't always. It can
take a lot of work to get it functional.
Yeah. I think it's just as difficult to get people together to do that as it is to get people to get together in real life. So unless you really have the schedule for it and the time for it, like a game's going to be difficult whether you do it online or in real life. The key difference, the big difference is that you have way more people to find that have your schedule.
Exactly.
So if you don't mind, not seeing the people in person, I mean, like nowadays you have like webcams and stuff like that, so that might not be so bad. There's definitely a lot of ways to get a game going online.
Yeah.
They're not all perfect, though. I don't know.
Yeah, nothing's perfect. Even playing in person isn't perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah, whatever works for you, whatever you can get, try it out and see how it works for you.
For sure. Our next question comes from Fingers Fate on Facebook. Are there any methods you can recommend to make rolling for initiative simpler? Also, have you ever had a DM or been a DM who keeps forgetting a player's turn frequently? And is there a trick to correct that habit?
The best advice I can do. I don't think I've ever been the DM that does that. I hope.
Well, you did it twice in the library.
Did I seriously?
Yeah, I think so. Or I don't think we skipped anybody. I don't think no, it wasn't that. It wasn't. We didn't skip anybody or anything. It was when we were taking initiative. When we were rolling initiative.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I kept forgetting to write down that person.
Yeah,
so the best advice I can give to prevent players from getting skipped, probably the most common reason for players to get skipped is probably because the DM has too much on his plate and he's got too many things to keep track of and he forgot it.
Sure.
So probably the best advice I can give for that is to ask a player if one of the players is willing to be the person to keep initiative.
Right.
So, like I said in previous episodes, the DM always has so many things that he's keeping track of. Mm-hmm. So if a player is willing to take even just a little bit of that burden, then it's going to help out.
Yeah, it makes things run a lot smoother.
Yeah. So if a player is in charge of the initiative, it's much less likely that the player is going to forget because the player doesn't have as many things going on.
Right. And like the player is focused on actions that their party is taking and actions that the character is taking. They're going to be a little bit more focused on something like initiative.
So as far as other methods for keeping initiative, I do have a few of those. Mm-hmm. One thing, it's not necessarily a way to keep initiative, but it's just kind of a neat little way to handle initiative that I never thought of that I think I heard of on Crit Academy. I think they suggested it as a way to like save time while taking initiative, and I don't think it would actually save time, but it would at least just make it a little different. Mm-hmm. And what I'm going to suggest is whenever you start the session, have all your players roll initiative and record it then. Mm-hmm. And then when combat starts, it's your turn. Go. It's your turn. Go. So you just go right into combat.
Sure.
Whatever they're doing, bam, you've already got their initiative. You just go right into it.
Yeah.
And then maybe once that combat's over, then you have them roll again for the next combat or something. So like I said, it doesn't really save time because you're still still taking initiative, but it makes going into combat so much more seamless. You don't have to break up the action.
Yeah.
You just go right into it. And I think that's a cool concept.
Yeah. So yeah, do it at the end of combat for your next combat, or just do it for the session, or maybe do it for like every long rest. When you wake up from a long rest, you roll your initiative for that day or something.
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, the major downside of that is like if you're only rolling initiative once, if you're somebody who has bonuses to initiative, like that's less times your bonus is coming into effect. So if you spent a feat on improved initiative, but you're using it like a fifth of the time you normally would, that's like that feat being 1/5 the power.
Yeah, if you put some sort of bonus into initiative, and you wouldn't really get as much of a benefit.
Right. Although I do like the idea in this, like if you were just doing one initiative for the session for the day, then people can sit in that order.
There you go.
At the table. So if you're at like a round table, you just go clockwise or counterclockwise if you're
if you're my wife who insists that everything is counterclockwise. No, I'm sorry. It's clockwise is the standard. Another idea that in order to make initiative a little bit simpler. One idea that I've heard people say is they use cards, so like note cards. So you get a note card, you write down each player's name on it, or character's name or whatever. And then when you take initiative, you put the cards in that order.
Yeah.
And then whoever's on top, it's your turn. Once that they take their turn, you flip it over, flip it to the back. Next person's turn. Flip it to the back, next person's turn, and so on.
Yeah.
When the round ends, you get back to the first person, it's right there. You'll never forget a turn because it's the only card that is staring you straight in the face.
Yeah, you might even do it like just like a draw and discard sort of thing, so you can have it like so you can get a count of full rounds even. So because there might be something that have full rounds. So like you just flip the cards over, and then once you get to the last one, you're like, okay, that's the end of the round, and then you just flip the stack over again. And so then when you do that, you can maybe mark somewhere that it was round 2. In case you're keeping track of spells and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Another suggestion, if you have a magnetic surface, such as a refrigerator door or a like most whiteboards, you can just like get some cheap magnets, write each person's name on like a card or a marker or something, and then put a magnet on it and then stick it onto the magnetic surface. And then when you roll initiative, put each player's name in the order that they're going to go. So that way, not only can you just look over and see, okay, it's this turn and then this turn and this turn, so it's all right there, but also it's in plain view of the players. So the players can see, okay, we're on this turn. My turn is 2 turns from now, so I got to start getting my stuff ready.
Right.
So if the players can see whose turn it is at any given moment and who's next, that's a good idea.
Yep.
I have heard of some groups where they don't want the players to know the order, which I suppose leads a little bit of realism, because then otherwise you can like plan out, if you know the bad guy is going last, you can like kind of plan your round that way. But if you're going for realism, you're using a turn-based battle system. It's already it's already so far past realism.
Yeah, D&D combat with every round is 6 seconds.
Yeah.
But there are as many as like 100 people taking their turns within 6 seconds, but it's in order.
Yeah. So like I took a 6-second turn, and then he took a 6-second turn.
But at the same time, but not.
Exactly. Because like if I kill the guy that he was going to attack, that means the guy was already dead before he took his turn, but his turn's taking place at the same time as mine. So realism is not, we've said it before, is not something you should necessarily strive for.
Right.
You should strive for consistency.
Sure.
Anyway, so yeah, if you can put the initiative in a place where the players can see it, that is such a great thing that you can do. And you could have you could either have it be that you physically move the names around, so when whoever's on top goes to the bottom, and then whoever's on top goes to the bottom, and so on. Maybe you could do that, or you could just have like a little marker that goes next to whoever's turn it is.
Sure,
or something.
Yeah, or for some reason the initiative changes, you can move them around. So
yeah, and it doesn't even have to be a magnetic surface. You could just have something that you can write on.
Yeah.
Let's say you have like an easel with a big pad of paper on it or something. Yeah. I don't know. As long as you can write it out in such a way that everybody can see it, and you can change it if need be.
Yeah, because I mean, we'll do it sometimes where just write it on the game
the game mat. Yeah.
Yeah, which I mean, like, it's good for at least keeping track of it in some way, but for everyone knowing what it is, like, you can't really see it from where you're at. You got to like turn to face away from the DM or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, having it up somewhere on display is a really good idea.
Sure. But yeah, speaking of the writing on the game mat, when I started playing with Chris, I think it was, that's what they would do. They would just like, the players and the DM would write out notes on the game board. If it was something that they would like, not necessarily worth putting on their character sheet, but if it's like an NPC name that they might need to remember in a couple minutes, just write it on the game mat. And then if anybody needs to, they can look over and see it, and then they can erase it whenever they have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, taking initiative is definitely There's definitely some things that can arise, but like I said, you can have cards, you can write on a whiteboard, you can give it to it, make a player keep track of it so that it's less for the DM. Mm-hmm. Whatever works for you.
And I was thinking, because like having maybe doing like rolling it ahead of time is a cool idea, because one of the problems of initiative is when you say roll initiative. Yeah, it's like you might not want the players to know they're starting a battle or something.
That's a good point.
And you might just be like, knowing so and so is first, you might go, what are you gonna do? Or a monster showed up. What are you gonna do? You just kind of start the battle a little bit more organically that way. I guess
that's a good point, because let's say the players are like going down the road and they see a group of guys down the road, and the DM says roll initiative. Yeah, whoever goes first, they're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna attack them. Right, because they assume that it's now combat because we've gone into initiative. But if instead it's just like hey Chris, what are you doing? You do that? Okay, all right. Hey Jay, what are you doing? And then that way it's still in order, but it's not as obvious that it is going to be a dangerous confrontation.
Right. And thinking of that scenario, it's like, okay, there's people coming down the road and roll initiative. Okay, someone's going to go the first person's going to go charge and attack those people. But, what if those people aren't even the hostiles? What if the hostiles are hiding in the bushes or something?
That's a good point.
And then so your character is just going to run up and kill a person. And the only motivation they had was that they rolled initiative. So that is pretty much, by definition, like out of character. Right. That is just not something like the character would do. So you got to find ways to, I don't know, like...
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's sort of, I don't know.
When I was running Shackled City, small spoilers big spoilers for the end of the first adventure of the Shackled City adventure path. Oh, yeah. There's an encounter where the players are fighting this bad guy, and then midway through the encounter, a beholder appears. Oh. And this is a first level adventure, so the players are in no way equipped to fight a beholder.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Here's where the biggest spoilers come in. The beholder is not hostile. Like, he shows up, he does a thing, and then he leaves. Right. And I've run this adventure a couple times. The first time I ran it, I think I might have even had the beholder show up after the bad guy was killed. I can't remember. But whatever the case, it was clear to the players that this was not still a combat when the beholder appeared. Uh-huh. So the characters didn't really... I don't think they were, like, scared or anything, because clearly this is like some kind of a cut scene or something where this, incredibly high level dangerous monster appeared again, in front of these first level characters. None of them had the urge to attack. Right. However, the last time that I ran it, because I think I've run this 3 times, whatever. The last time I ran this for you guys, I had the beholder show up during the battle, and I kept it in rounds. So this beholder shows up, and then the players get to take their turn. Right. And I remember Steve telling me that, like, he really liked how I did that, because the players, even though I'm pretty sure all of you guys knew that there was a beholder somewhere, because I believe you all had played it at least once before. Right. But Steve told me he couldn't remember how that encounter was supposed to go, so he didn't know if he was supposed to attack the beholder or not. Uh-huh. And he didn't. He didn't attack the beholder. And the beholder didn't kill anybody in response. He just did his thing and then he left. Right. But that was a much better way to handle it. And so that's kind of the exact opposite of what you were saying. It's the same principle, but turned around. If the players are in rounds, they're going to think that something is a hostile situation. Right, yeah. And so they are probably going to act like they're in a hostile situation. So the smoother you can get them into combat without stopping and being like, okay, guys, we're about to go into combat, roll initiative. Yeah. Then the less likely they're going to play like they're in combat. Sure. Yeah. So Jeff, before we go into the next question, I have an important announcement.
Oh, okay.
This next question is a special one. Oh. Do you know why?
No.
This next question is our 100th question.
What?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes. Insert fanfare here. That's all. Nothing else to report, I guess.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
All right.
All right. Next question comes from Jarl of Rum. And this was on Reddit. As a DM, how does one break out of the habit of just using the same type of monster over and over?
Now, this is a tough one because I have this problem. In general, like whenever I just need a quick encounter, I tend to just grab whatever medium-sized monstrous humanoid is on my mind. Like,
Sure.
oh, okay, some orcs attack. Or maybe like, oh, some goblins or some kobolds attack.
Some hobgoblins.
I guess. I often don't really put thought into what the monsters are. I might put more thought into like the situation, but one race is interchangeable for another and so on when I'm planning an encounter most of the time. So really,
honestly, I always assumed that was just how the adventures were written. And stuff like that.
A lot of the time they are, and that's probably why I got into this habit.
It's just like, and especially like lower level adventures, like you only have, there's a smaller pool of lower level like monsters, I'd say.
And also I do it because with humanoids, like I don't need to keep track of special abilities. Usually I can just, okay, they got an AC, they got some hit points, I give them an axe and they attack.
They got 2 hands, 2 feet, maybe a weapon.
Right.
That's easy to keep track of.
Yeah.
I do that every day.
Right. So I do fall into the trap of just using the same type of thing because, and the reason is because I'm not putting much thought into the composition. So even just taking an active look into what encounters you're building is going to lead to more diverse enemy types.
Yeah.
So, that's the first thing is just be more aware. If you go in thinking, okay, I don't want to use the same monsters every time, then you're not going to.
Yeah.
That being said, some other ways of just coming up with like better monster ideas, you might want to just say to yourself, okay, today I'm going to use this monster I've never used, this monster I rarely use, and then maybe this monster that I often use.
Sure.
So if you just make it a priority to try to use things that you use less, I feel like this is all pretty self-explanatory.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's more just kind of like simpler, forceful way to do it.
Yeah.
A way to choose those monsters though is like you might need to like start reading through the monster descriptions. Like maybe you thumb through the monster manual 100 times and you always fall on the same ones because maybe they just look cool. Maybe that particular book, the artist is like drew that monster really well, and that's the only one you ever drawn to.
Yeah.
Read some of the other ones. Maybe their description has something in there that you think is cooler than you first thought, and that might drive you to start using different monsters.
Like, oh, this weird mongoose-looking thing can cast reverse gravity?
What?
Okay, I'll find a way to make it work.
What? Is that a real thing?
It's a real thing. It's called a gravorg. Maybe it's not a
mongoose?
Maybe it doesn't look like a mongoose. In the picture, it looks like a cuddly little mongoose thing.
Right.
I'll post a picture of it. There's this. In the 3rd edition Monster Manual 2, the description makes it sound like, this dirty, vicious-looking monster. And then you look at the picture, and it's like the cuddliest little critter you've ever seen. I'll see if I can find a picture of it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so like reading through the Monster Manual can be pretty good. Really, just going outside of your comfort zone when it comes to like environments. Will probably, if you have never used any monsters that are underwater, any aquatic monsters, and then you're like, well, I'm going to set an encounter in the water.
Oh, no.
You're probably not going to throw orcs in the water.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think there's probably an aquatic subrace of orcs or something.
Probably.
There's an aquatic subrace of everything.
There's an aquatic troll, I want to say.
Oh, yeah.
The name is escaping me at the moment. If you are interested in just like quick little forays into monsters you've never heard of, there's a podcast that I want to recommend. It is called Monster in My Podcast. It's part of there's a really big podcasting network called duckfeed.tv.
There's a monster in my podcast.
Yes. And so one of the podcasts they have, it was a Patreon goal of theirs. It's in very small bites. Each episode is like 5 minutes long, but they release 3 episodes a week, and they are going through the 2nd edition Monster Manual from A to Z. They've gone through up to like M or something by now over the last year or so. Yeah. And so they go through each episode is one of the entries in the Monster Manual. And some of these monsters you've never heard of for good reason. Sure. Let's be honest here. But some of the monsters are like, what the heck is that? I want to use that.
Yeah.
They had a really good discussion about the male Medusas. I can't remember what the details were, but go listen to it. It's like 5 minutes of your time.
Gave the Medusas.
They may have made that joke. I could be wrong.
They have to have.
So yeah, they go through these different monster entries. You just listen for 5 minutes and just hear them goof around about some monster that you've never heard of or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of fun. And it can give you lots of ideas for other monsters to use. Yeah. Because probably a large amount of it is just you aren't familiar with all of the monsters, so you're going to default to the ones you're familiar with.
Mm. Another thing you could do is just use encounter generators.
Absolutely.
You might end up getting some weird stuff that you've never used before, and you're kind of forcing yourself to try something new.
Yeah.
So that'd be an easy way to do it. I mean, like you might have to like roll it a couple times or something, just in case something just does not fit with the the setting.
Sure.
Like it's like it's you're not gonna see a red dragon
underwater.
Right. Although that'd be interesting.
That's kind of a neat idea for an encounter now. Why is this red dragon underwater?
He's got like a submarine or something. I don't know.
If there was a yellow dragon, I would say he's in a yellow submarine, but there isn't. So you make the joke yourself, listeners. Now, I think it is probably worth saying it might not be a bad idea to use the monsters you're most familiar with, as long as you can make them interesting every time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if it's something you're used to using, that means it's going to be a smoother battle because you're going to know what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And a smoother battle means a smoother session, which is usually a better time.
Right. Now in 5th edition, I don't think there's much in the way of templates, but in 3rd edition, there were templates galore.
Oh, yes.
That could be applied to monsters.
Oh, God, yes.
And you could make an encounter so different by applying the right template to the right monster. You could take a monster that you've used a million times and then apply like the half clay golem template to it, and now it's like got all sorts of damage reduction and it goes crazy when you hit it and all sorts of weird stuff.
You could do it was a war troll with half black dragon.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Half black dragon war troll.
It's a war troll which does not have the weakness to fire.
Yeah, so it's a troll that has no weakness, basically.
Because trolls are normally weak to acid and fire.
The war troll is only weak to acid.
And then if it was a half black dragon,
and he's immune to acid. Yeah, that's one thing to do.
And then you give him like, oh my goodness! What did he do? This is a monster our friend Jay had created. This was one of Jay's creations.
Yeah. I don't remember what that thing actually did. But when I first met Chris, one of the things that just I thought was hilarious was his proficiency in templates. He would take like a CR 1/4 kobold and turn it into a CR 30 monstrosity by giving it the fiendish and half fiend template. So it would be a demonic kobold that's also half demon. And then it would have multiple arms, and it would be able to fly, and it would be gargantuan and all sorts of stuff. And it was just hilarious, but at its core, it was a kobold.
Right, it was just a kobold.
So there's always heck, you can take a monster that you are very, very familiar with mechanically and reskin it to be something completely different.
Yeah.
You could have your party face 5 completely different monsters story-wise, but stat-wise, they're all the same monster. You could do that.
Yeah. And it's just like, instead of swinging a sword, it's slashing a claw or something.
Yeah.
Same stats.
Yeah, so it's not inherently bad to use the same type of monster over and over, but when Jarl of Rum asks this question, he's asking, how do I get out of this? So clearly he wants to get out of it.
Sure.
So to get out of it, just, expose yourself to more monsters.
Yeah.
Put yourself in a situation where you have to use something else and see what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You might develop a new favorite monster, and then you'll be asking the question again because now all you use is that new monster.
Can't stop using pancakes. Just can't.
They just pull players down and then eat them. It's so great.
Our next question comes from Nicholas P. Hi, Nick. This is on email, and he asks, how do you plan out your campaigns, and what do you think is the best way to plan out a campaign?
So full disclosure, I don't run many campaigns. I've never run very many campaigns that were completely written by me. I'm at my best when I am running a pre-written, even an entire pre-written adventure path with heavy modifications for me. So like I rarely start from scratch. I pretty much always start with a pretty good framework and then change stuff as I go. Mm-hmm. But from what I have seen of other people's campaigns that they have made, and from what little experience I do have with making stuff from the beginning or from scratch, is you probably want to make sure that at the beginning of the process, you want to make sure that you know where the campaign is going to start and where it's going to go. Because if you don't have an ending planned, it's probably going to feel like you don't have an ending planned.
Sure.
So make sure that you know where you're going to start and where you're going to end, and probably a few points in the middle. You don't necessarily want to have those points planned out too much.
Right.
You definitely want there to be flexibility, because one of the best things that you can give a player is the feeling that their actions mean something.
Right, yeah.
So if a player does something unexpected, I'm just telling you, you want to be able to change things on the fly as you go. You want to be able to take things that they did earlier and have them impact things later. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to be too rigid, especially far off in the future. At any given moment, I would say you should probably try to have the current adventure all planned out, probably the next adventure planned out. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, you don't necessarily have to have anything concrete, but the further in advance you can start planting seeds, the better.
Yeah.
If there's an NPC that the players meet and you want that NPC to become a villain, like you want to have him turn, it turns out that he's actually the bad guy in disguise or something.
Yeah.
If they just met him, that's not going to have much of an impact. However, if you're going to have him do the reveal in 2 adventures and they meet him now, that is a great amount of time. So the more time that passes between when the seed is planted and when it gets paid off, the better.
Yeah.
So you want to at least have a good enough idea that you can start planting seeds. So like I've been listening to The Adventure Zone. I've mentioned it many, many times. I feel like I've said this exact thing, but it's very, very close to being done. They just finished what is actually the final arc. I thought they had finished the final arcs a couple months ago.
Oh, gosh.
But they just finished. From what it sounds like, there's going to be one more session, like one more episode, and then it's over. Mm. And they've just revealed a lot of stuff. And thinking back, Griffin, the DM, there is so much stuff that he had to have known 2 years ago when they started running it, because he planted seeds at the very beginning that we are just now getting paid off. Mm. Like, I'll try not to spoil anything, but in one of the first sessions, maybe like the second or third session, the wizard in the group gets a magic staff. It's an umbrella. It looks like a goofy pink umbrella, but it's called the Umbra Staff. Mm. He gets that in like the 3rd episode. And here we are, like, I'm talking 7 or 8 story arcs later, we just now found out where that staff came from, and it blew my mind and almost brought me to tears when they revealed where that staff came from.
Oh, man.
So, and like, if you look back, he planted, it's not just that there was a staff and then he later had plans for it. If you go back and you listen to where he found the staff, what corpse he found the staff on, what the dungeon was they were in when they found the staff, and what was in that dungeon, if he didn't have it planned from the beginning, then he is a freaking wizard at making these things fit together.
Sure. So, I mean, like, there are some people who just like really like just kind of have a knack for sort of just like using what they have and putting them together.
Yeah.
Otherwise you do kind of have to make a bit of a scaffolding for your story and like, fit things together. Yeah. Now, when it comes to writing, like just like writing a book or whatever, I have heard people say there's like different, I'm trying to think of what the terms are. There are people who they plan out like this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen. And then there are other people who they're like, well, I'm just going to start writing and see where it goes. Sure. And then there's varying degrees of both. And neither one is bad. I think that in D&D, it is especially important that you have as close to a mix of the two as possible. Yeah. Because you do want there to be a framework so that you know where you're going so that you can plan things out ahead of time. But because the players are going to be an active force in the world, you do, under no circumstances do you want it to be rigid. Yeah. So yeah, you do have to have you do have to plan ahead, otherwise you don't have an adventure for that session or something. Like you have to plan ahead at least to a certain point. So.
Yeah. So like I said, I personally haven't really planned out many campaigns from beginning to end. I've experimented with some, but none that, came to fruition or anything. But if you were to do so, make sure you know where it starts, make sure you know where it ends, and try to have some noteworthy points in the middle.
Mm-hmm. All right. So our next question comes from Fingers Fate on Facebook. What are some ways to get players to develop their characters more? And should I let players be as two-dimensional as they like if they're having fun?
So this is a good question. And I think this question, it really illustrates some of the differences between different types of players.
Sure.
There are players that are perfectly fine playing a two-dimensional character that all they do is just roll dice and kill stuff.
Sure.
That is a perfectly valid way to play the game, and that's what, to be honest, that's what a lot of players want. Mm-hmm. I think that, especially like on the 5th edition Facebook group, it's the cool thing to talk about how, no, role-playing is the best. Role-playing is all that matters. Story is all that matters. And I'm not trying to say that those aren't good.
Right.
Story is very important. For many people, story is all that matters. Mm-hmm. For many people, role-playing is the best part of the game. I'm not trying to say that that is in any way not correct. But I have, and for a long time, I had that attitude too. I thought that was the point of the game. Like the point of D&D is to role play. The point of D&D is to get that story. But then over the years, I've played with so many groups where really all they are there to do is just roll dice and kill stuff. And there is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, the whole point of the game isn't to just role play; it's to have fun. So I mean, like if as long as everybody's having fun, even if one person's really into role playing and one person's just into role playing with 2 L's, as long as they're both having fun, everything's great. Everything's gravy.
Yeah. Yeah, so it very well may be that your players are fine with their characters being two-dimensional.
Yeah, I'll say that I typically play more of a two-dimensional character. I mean, I try to dabble into developing my character a little bit more. It doesn't really come naturally to me.
Yeah.
So like I'm usually more a little bit more comfortable keeping it in my character a little bit simpler. Just
sure.
But I mean, I'm there because I'm having fun. I like creating a character like statistically, like I like all the numbers and everything, and I do try to come up with like cool ideas for the character, but it doesn't always come out in the actual gameplay. Yeah, sometimes like in the back of my head, this is like I have a cool idea for my character, but I don't necessarily like act on it. So
right.
So I mean if you feel like one of your players is not not developing their character enough, I mean, maybe that's just, that might just be how they want to do it.
It might just be the player.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, sometimes I would say my character is about 50-50. Sometimes I make a character where, like, I got a really cool story idea that I would love to work on. Sometimes I'm just making a character because I like the mechanics.
Yeah.
There's a reason that, like, character optimization is such a popular thing among some people, because some people are playing the game for the numbers.
Yeah.
So, this isn't really the question, but like try not to discourage people who that's what they want to play. Like we said many times, it's just a matter of whether it's the right fit for the group.
Yeah.
So if you're the DM and your players are fine with having two-dimensional characters, if you want to try and get them more involved in their character, that's fine. You can try.
Yeah.
Just unless that's gonna be a deal breaker for you, unless like that's why you're playing the game, then maybe just consider throw the players a couple opportunities, and if they aren't really biting, then just let them be the character they want to be.
Yeah.
So some ways to get your players involved in their characters more. Some simple things that you can do. You can try because okay. I was gonna say try like giving them a questionnaire to like answer about their characters, but actually, looking back at the email that Fingers Fate sent me, he actually tried that. He gave his players a list of questions, and so he could get like story hooks and get their goals and everything. And his players didn't really take it to heart. Like not all of them answered the questions, and it just wasn't really something they're interested in. And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to take an approach like that, like giving your players a questionnaire, you could even do something as simple as in the session, find some way to ask the player something about their character. You might want to just have it be out. You might want to have it be out of game. Like you might just say like, okay, your character comes up to the bakery and smells his favorite food. What is it? Or you might have it be something that's more in character where like an NPC says like, oh, thank you for saving the village. I'll make your favorite food. I will make you whatever you want. What do you want me to make for you?
Right.
So yeah, something as simple as that.
So similar to the questionnaire, but a little bit more organic. So maybe it's, so it might kind of, I guess, trick the player into developing their character.
Yeah, that's what you should be doing, deceiving your players.
Well, I mean, like,
I'm just giving you a hard time.
But I mean, like, kind of, yeah. Like, if you can trick your players into doing something for themselves, like they're gonna be excited about it. I don't know. It's like if it like you want to be in control as the DM, but not too much. Otherwise, it's just feel like you're railroading.
Yeah.
So you can find a way to trick your players into doing things for themselves, but it's still something you want. That's a good way to go. But
you could even get a little bit more in depth if you want something more than just what's their favorite food. You could maybe say like, again, not necessarily in character, but you could say like, okay, there you see a person from your past show up. Who is that person?
Yeah.
And if you can put a little bit more of the game into the hands of the player, it might force the player to come up with something about their character. They might even just give you like a knee-jerk reaction, steak. My character's favorite food is steak.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I mean, maybe that's not ideal, but it's something.
Yeah.
That's something about their character that they had not thought of previously.
Right.
You could have then a later time where somebody says like, you're the guy that likes steak, don't you?
Sure.
And then try to get a reaction out of them that way.
Yeah. Like, yeah, and I feel like I could definitely see there being the times where like, yeah, somebody's trying this and then like after a few attempts, it's just not getting through to them. At that point, you're like, okay, this person's not here for character development. They're here to hang out and have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at the very least, that's a way for you to tell which kind of player you're dealing with. So you can work around that.
Yeah. So it's not going to be ideal if you want your players to develop their characters and they don't. There isn't really going to be a great way to get something that works for both of you. It might have to just be something that you just let them do on their own. But yeah, if you can try just to get a little bit out of your character, out of your players, I keep saying characters. If you can try just a little something to try to get something out of your players, you can at least see whether that's what they want. Because it's important to know if it's something that they just don't want, or if it's something they want but don't know how to express. It might even be something they want but don't know that they want.
Sure. Yep.
So any way that you can get just a little bit out of a player at a time, over time, that'll give you a really good picture of exactly which category the player falls into. And, I don't think I would never kick somebody out of a group because they didn't want to role play with their character.
Sure.
I feel like there's probably some people that would, but I hope this is not a deal breaker for anybody, but if somebody in your group doesn't really want to role play their character, then, consider just letting them.
Yeah.
So that'll about do it for today. To submit items and questions, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, a running list of questions asked, and important links, or to download the episode, go to interpartyconflict.com. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/interpartyconflict or our subreddit at reddit.com/r/interpartyconflict. We're also on Twitter at InPartyConflict. We're on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube. Please rate, review, tell a friend about us, subscribe, send us a couple bucks on PayPal, whatever you guys want to do, anything you can do to help us out, to help us make the podcast as best as it can possibly be, then that's awesome and we love it.
Yeah.
And also FriendQuest.
Yep. We also have FriendQuest on YouTube if you want to watch us play video games, played some old D&D arcade games, and we had a pretty good time with it.
And hopefully soon we will have some slightly less old D&D games to put on there as well.
Yeah, still on the lookout for Dark Alliance. It's kind of tough to find. I might as well just order it online.
You could, but it's always nice to find one organically.
Yeah, I like going to the stores and like thumbing through all the old games. I found a couple cool ones, but I'll keep looking.
One thing I forgot to mention, I have an idea for a new segment for the podcast. So I was thinking of putting this into upcoming episodes. I had an idea for a segment called The Funeral Pyre. The idea is maybe at the end of an episode, we wouldn't even necessarily have to have it on every episode, maybe just some of them. But at the end of an episode, before we do the outro spiel, we read a submission from a listener about a character death. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I got an email from a guy who he sent me an email with the first ever time one of his characters died. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a fun story, and it would be an interesting read. So if anybody wants to submit any of their character deaths, either maybe your first character death, maybe a character death that was very ironic, maybe one that you should not have died, but the dice just hated you that day.
Right.
Something where you just got utterly destroyed.
Sure.
Anything that you can think of, go ahead and send it to us, and we may include it in a future episode.
Mm-hmm. Sounds cool.
All right. Oh, and our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time.
Play your characters fast and loose. We need some deaths.
we need some deaths. Get those deaths in here.
Yes.
All right. See you next time.
Bye, everybody.